What's good, everybody? My name is Alckemy. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be covering part 2 of the Baby Audio plugin suite review. I wanted to focus on separating the two because one was more of spatial and stereo stuff, where this is more of dynamics, frequency, saturation, and compression and the like. So yeah, Baby Audio sent me these plugins. Thank you so much. But they did say that I can be completely unbiased, and I've got a few thoughts on some of these plugins in particular that I think will hopefully be helpful, or hope give some insight in helping you, the viewer, make a more informed decision on whether or not these are for you, but also for for the devs to maybe consider in future updates or in future products alike. So yay, everybody wins. So yeah, this one I actually have a track that I'm working on, and I'm gonna go ahead and just play some of it, and then we'll be mostly focusing on the drums. There's a couple of things that I think is actually kind of cool within bass that I think is a neat little trick. So let's go ahead and just listen to part of the intro, and then we will go from there. So yeah, I want to focus on the drums for this in particular, and I think that looking at these plugins, I've got a couple of things on here, which is a room reverb and a soft clipper, but I'm going to pull these off and let's just take a listen to how this sounds with the hat part. Pretty punchy and pretty large. But the first plugin that we'll take a look at is the IHNY2, or iHeart New York compression. And what this is designed to do is kind of be like it's a parallel compression device that it gives you a lot of different options to kind of shape the parallel side of it. And if you don't know what parallel compression is, it basically is when you have two signals that are playing together. One of them is clean and the other one is super duper squashed compression to kind of help, I guess, like build punch and smack to your mix. So with this in parallel compression, kind of dragging this around, you have the dry and wet on the left, and then the aggression and amount over on the left and right. But you've also got this tweak knob down here that allows you to have a couple of different things. And there's something that I really like about this in particular, which is the punch right here. So if you ever take a look at a typical compressor, it always looks like a knee. Like an actual, like, I guess a leg, if you will, that has a knee. And what happens is whenever you have something that, hold on one second, dynamics would be the one. Whenever you have a signal that travels across the compression in general, it has quiet and loud sounds. And so what this does is it says, okay, well, once it hits this threshold, it's going to start ducking the signal kind of like so. So if we were to kind of just pull the low threshold down, pull the high threshold down kind of like this, you'll see that any volume or any sound that's above this amount here is going to start to have this gentle curve. So but you can see that there's a signal that's traveling along this curve from this way to this way. And what's significant about iHeart New York 2 is that with this little punch guy right here, you're actually manipulating the curve. And one thing that I think is really cool, but also a missed opportunity, is that one of the only other plugins that does this is Maximus. And if you're on Mac and you don't use FL Studio, you're kind of out of luck. Now there is also the Pro MB or multiband MB dynamic thing from Melda, which is super duper expensive. But I think that this is something that is super useful, especially if you've seen some of the people that I admire use Maximus or the like. But having the ability to change the compression curve as if it were an envelope is really significant. I just wish that it was multi-band. And in the future, like, I would love if you guys could do that. Now, in theory, there is a workaround to this, but you would have to do a frequency split. And then also you can only manipulate the curve from, here to here. So if this were a wave shaper that you could kind of just like change the curve in general, even if it were just one line, but you can kind of change it in that way, that would be really substantial for this in particular. But anyways, Yeah, that was just one thing that I wanted to talk about that I thought was really cool, but wanted to see. So you've got your attack over here. You've got your ratio. This is your typical compressor line in general. You've also got harmonics that you can add to it. You've also got shaping that you can add to it, and then you've got tilt, which is pretty much an EQ, so you can shift it to where it's focusing on louder frequencies on the low end and then ducking the higher frequencies or vice versa. And then with this, you've got basic EQ of a high-low shelf. So yeah, with all that, let's go ahead and kind of just move this around and see what these drums sound like whenever we kind of mess with this. So that's 100% compression.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Now, one thing that's really important to consider when it comes into drums stuff and mixing in general is that, everybody has a particular aesthetic for what they like. And so, I'm trying to show you the extremes about how far this can go rather than get it right. The thing is that when I do my own drum design, I usually don't have a huge list of effects that are on my master channel or that are on even my drum bus, because I try to be more mindful about when I design this stuff, like from the sound design point, if that makes sense. So I usually do my drums and I guess like my kicks and snares and stuff from scratch, and I use synthesizers for that. So I would be placing this kind of compressor stuff during the sound design stage as opposed to like making the whole bus come together. Now you will see that on this, I've got a small room reverb, and then I've also got a clipper, which is something, I don't know if this has one that's built in or not, but that's always something that I think is great to have, which I know that Tape Machine does, but I don't know if this does. But putting a clipper on any kind of compressor is just, it was made popular by the glue compressor in Ableton, which was modeled after the SSL something, the British compressor that had the peak clip control or whatever. But I find that having a soft clipper on anything that has compression on it is only helpful. And this goes out to like any dev that might be watching this, like please just in the future put a clipper on your stuff. That definitely helps. So anyways, tangent about clippers, but yeah, I think that for this in particular, it's really just about whether or not you like that kind of style. I suppose rather than trying to, make this sound super crazy or whatever, we can do like a basic drum bus or something and kind of see what that sounds like. So that's 100% wet with a full amount. And I think what's interesting, and I do like the intuition from this plugin, because I think that it's trying to keep me around this area. That seems like what's going on with why this is making this sound. So as opposed to going to the extremes, it's like, hey, here's how loud your drums are. Try to focus on somewhere. So it's looking like this does have a clipper built into it. As you can see, when I turned it off, it was hidden at that 0 dB point, but that's awesome. So thank you, clippers. Clippers are great. I wouldn't use this as a clipper per se, but a limiter or something in that point is always great. So now with this stuff in particular though, I find that the differences are so subtle that you kind of really have to get in and demo this for yourself to see if this is something that's going to improve your mix or make it worse or better. But with that being said, I think that this is something that I would educate yourself on compression and whatnot before you go in and make an actual purchase on it, because that's what's going to be you're going to figure out whether or not that's helpful to you, if that makes sense. It's not like, oh, check out how wide this chorus is. It's like, nah, man, we're getting into the subtleties of this kind of design. I do like the way that some of this stuff sounds. I don't know if it outrules the other tools that I have, or if I would replace it with my saturator just for the sake of clipping. But for me in particular, I try to use less and less compression these days because I like big drums, and you can make them sound super glued and all that, but I don't know. That's not really necessarily like my particular mix preference. Reviewing compressors and dynamic stuff has always been kind of difficult because it's like, again, the differences are small. But yeah, I'd say demo it and see if that works for you. And as far as that feature plugin, if you ever added a wave shaper, even if it was just one band, I would say that this would be a must buy for me. So yeah. All right, next one, we've got Parallel Aggressor, which is kind of, it's a multi-parallel channel, but it's not really so much focused on compression as it is for distortion and transient shaping. So this plugin is an amazing gateway into an extremely useful thing that that I use as a technique that I use to layer my drums with, but is not something that's like super commonly well known. So one thing that you'll see over on my drum bus is that I've got a snap heap right here, and that is because what I often do in order to get more textures and stuff is use a combination of effects and distortion and blah 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 in which to get more layers for my drums. So let's say I liked all of that and I wanted to resample it. I would just pull up the rolling sampler here, which is turned off, but I would pull that up and then I can just drag that out into the timeline. Now with something like Parallel Aggressor, this was a technique that was shown to me both from Chi and Cage and the like. Shout out to those guys, by the way. What you can do is you can use this. Also, there's a video with Disprove doing something of the like. But what you can do is you can kind of set a transient shaper and a distortion level along with your dry signal on here. So if I were to solo this and just focus on the transients, on a subtle level, like, you know what I mean, if your drums aren't hitting hard enough, then you can focus on pulling the transients up a little bit more and kind of move everything together. If you want more punch, if you want an extra smack, you could do that. I think this is a low preservation, and then you could mono the signal, because most of the time your transients want to be in mono anyways. But this is really cool because you can use something like this along with something like Snap Heap or along with other effects in which to pull just the transients out and focus on shaping those to color them with other effects. That's pretty cool. There are other ways that you can do that, you know, of course, with other effects, but this is kind of cool because it's convenient and it's all built in one. But there is that. So you've got your spank controls over here. Let me turn these back off and we'll focus on the distortion signal now, which typically in the past, the way that I learned this from Disprove, he has this video on Sample Genie, was you would take the original signal of your drums and high pass it by like 100 hertz or so, and then you would also take a really distorted sine bass of the key of your song and glue those together and distort the heck out of it, and then take out like the smushed parts of that. This pretty much does that, and the only thing that I wish that this had was, I don't know, I guess a wave shaper or at least more distortion types of the like, because it's super versatile. So if we just take a listen to what the distortion signal sounds like. So with something like this, right, you've got this really heavy, crunchy stuff. And what I like about it is that it's high passing it. And so because it's high passing it, that means that you can use this as layers for your drums. Now, this was designed to be able to do what I'm talking about without resampling and just put it on your main channel. But for me in particular, I wouldn't necessarily want to have it on every single drum hit. This is something that I would only want to have on specific accents of a kick or something. So I would go and resample that. But this mindset is definitely on the right track. It's definitely like, there's definitely a methodology to this, especially with the kind of music that I like to make, that I think would be super useful. Again, just if there were some more distortion types on it that we could use. But in any case, what this is designed for is to kind of have a nice little mix between these. So maybe something like here, maybe something like here, and subtlety is the game. But you have all of these combined, mixing together, so that way you get this fatter sound. So, I mean, you can get some pretty fat sounds out of this. And, if you're struggling with getting, big drums and whatnot, I think that this is definitely like a good jump off point to help you get started. Although I do things on a little bit more of like controlled level, uh, I don't think that there's anything wrong with this. And then also having the ability to kind of just isolate the transients, especially if you don't have Bitwig that has a transient splitter, I think that this could be something that, might be useful to you. So yeah, there's that. The next one I want to talk about is actually, yeah, I guess we'll show it on here first. This is pretty much like a spectral designer, I guess, of some sort that kind of does a mixture between EQ, compression, and tone shaping, or like, I guess, resonant shaping, resonant control. If you're familiar with something like Soothe, this is a cheaper version of that, as price wise anyways. But yeah, it's really interesting. So this is kind of versatile in the means of you don't necessarily even have to use this as an EQ or the way that it's designed. I wish that there were more bands, because you've got a shelf, two shelves, an overall, like, I guess a threshold knob, and then you've got two bands this way. And you can always make more copies of this, but I think if you had like 5 or 7, that would be ideal for me anyways. But what you do is you listen to this, and if you've got some harsh resonances or something, you can kind of just tone them like this. But it does it in such a way that's not just EQ, right? It also compresses it. It also helps control it. This is great for something like sibilance or something of the sort, if you're working on vocals. In fact, we can probably just do a quick example of that. And I'll just be really, really annoying and obnoxious with this. So we're going to set this to mono. This is sibilance control because there's lots of S's and things that are SE for S'ing Essers. So yeah, if we were to add the smooth operator on here, and disclaimer, by the way, there's already a de-esser on OBS, just because I guess the anatomy of my teeth structure makes me have very sibilant sounds. But with that, we can kind of just give this a cool little demo and see what this sounds like. This is sibilance control because there's lots of S's and things that are SE for S'ing Essers. It sounds great. I think that's an extremely useful tool. Now, I think that it's a little bit less heavy on CPU. And the other thing that you might want to consider is that for some reason, there's actually a bug with Bitwig, and between Bitwig and Oak Sound Soothe, that really just makes my CPU jump all over the place. So this is a great alternative if you just need to kind of, clean things up a bit. However, what's really cool about this is you can actually modulate the frequency bands and also the gain of the bands into as if it were a filter. So it's almost like a double notch filter that also has compression and resonant control. So what that means for me is I could grab something like a neurobass or whatever, and I could pull up something that just is like screaming in tone and has all these different moving parts of them or whatever. But let's just grab a neurobass. We'll do face melt. I don't know, I've got so many of these days, but this is what it sounds like. So what we can do is we can grab that smooth operator on here, and we can make 2 notches. You can also do a boost notch if you want to, which, okay, why not? Let's just do that. One thing is that these will never cross over, which I think is kind of interesting. I would like it if they maybe could. But with that being said, we can kind of maybe sweep the low mids around that 200 region, and then maybe just do like a small boost around 1 to 2K. And the reason why is just because of the way that these kinds of basses work. You don't really need to boost the fundamental of this, but I'm going to try to pinch this a little bit more. I like that they added pinch controls with a trackpad. Thank you so much for doing that. But yeah, we can kind of sweep around here, and then also we can kind of boost around here to see if we can get something kind of cool. So what we would do is maybe grab a modulator here with a random, and I think we'll just set these to be opposite of each other. So we need to wiggle this to where it's on frequency, and we'll just wiggle it kind of there and set this to smooth. Now for the next one, we will grab this little guy like this. Maybe we'll start here, start up and work our way down. So left peak frequency, we'll move that kind of down. So now these should be kind of moving together. And for this one, I'm going to set this one to be the opposite. So this one will go down, this one will go up. There we go. That goes all the way to 5K. That's a little bit much, but now I'm just being picky. But even still, neurobase is kind of finicky and whatnot sometimes. But now that I have that, I can use this kind of spectral EQ thing to essentially make cool filters and stuff. And I think that's a great direction that I would like to see in bass design is, you know, imagine doing all the crazy filtering and stuff, but you've got these spectral things that help tone the sound that allow you to not make things so harsh. Long story short, or maybe you don't have to add an extra compressor at the end or something of the sort, right? So now I think that I'm going to turn this off for just a hot sec because I think that we can actually solo this. I want to say maybe not, but even still, you can use this to kind of boost this up super high, and you can use a bunch of these even. So imagine just going like bop, 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 right? With a bunch of these to create like interesting resonance peaks and whatnot to kind of, I don't know, just explore. You can kind of bring everything back with a saturate or something. Now, these kinds of things really shine whenever you start using pitch bends and stuff, but you can see that, you know, it's pretty tame. And I think that's something that, you know, you can consider. Now, one thing that I did notice with this, if I'm not mistaken, is, yeah, so the more that you use these, the more latency that you introduce. So there's not any latency compensation. That's not really a big deal for me in particular because I bounce everything to audio anyways. But, you know, it's just one of those things to kind of keep in mind whenever you're using them. But yeah, I think that this is great for what it does. And it's a much cheaper alternative to something like Soothe or even Goldfoss, I think. So that might be something you might want to take a look at. All right. I think the last one that we have, we're going to go back to the drums on this one, is the tape. And the tape is pretty cool. And one thing that I didn't know that one of my viewers, Avid, pointed out to me is that almost every like tape saturation analog thing does have clipping involved. One thing that I would like for this to do, this is going to sound really stupid, but one thing that I would like for this to do is that on the defaults where it says start here, I would actually like this to not be noticeable. And the reason why is because it has a clipper built into it, because I would like to start from absolutely nothing and then start to gently boost it and see what it does. But as soon as you turn this thing on, it immediately makes a difference, long story short. So let me see if I can go back to that start here. I'll just pull up a new instance, but yeah, so we'll go like this. We'll go to that tape machine and let's listen to the drums without it, and then we'll listen to the drums with it. So this is without. So this one in particular, as you can see, it has AI in the front to be cheeky, but there's some kind of AI built into this, and I'm not quite sure what it does or like what the AI is meant to achieve. But it is an AI tape emulation or tape saturation emulator that I think sounds kind of nice. You can hear that my kick is really strong within this tune without the saturators and all the other things that I'm using within this. But I find that even just turning this on, it is more subtle than usual, but it's still, you know, super like it you can hear it doing stuff, long story short. So it would be kind of cool to start from nothing and then kind of work there as opposed to even just having a mix knob. But there's a lot of features in this that I actually really like that I guess need to cover. So for one, you've got more tape saturation on here that you can drive this for, which I think is pretty cool. Let's just go ahead and add a little bit more to that. You can also adjust the output. I don't want to mess with that because the clipper is meant to, do its job. But you've got noise on here that you can introduce. So you've also got wear that you can introduce if you want to make it more lo-fi. And then you've got this cool little glue thing right here, which I'm guessing is some kind of glue compressor that So with this, you've got two different input types and two different models. So the first one is hot, normal, and then the other one is hot. Which obviously, my kicks and actually my drums have a lot of distortion and stuff in general. So you might want to use this on like an acoustic style drum break or something, or, you don't even have to use this on a drum kit, but I think that this kind of helps paint the picture about what kind of sounds to expect. And then you also got a single and a dual model. So let's listen to that on normal. Can't really tell the difference. This brings back some high end. This is a high shaper, which is a little much for me, but you've also got a low shaper here. What's really cool about this though is if you introduce a little bit of wear, and this is where the single and dual really comes alive. So if it's on a single, then when you start to play with the mix, you're going to introduce some flanging. And then if you do it in dual, then it's going to be in stereo. So So with this, I think that it does some really cool stuff. And again, from every, plugin that I've reviewed from Baby Audio, I think that the sound quality is definitely there. But I do feel like these are for specific use cases. And so for me in particular, I think that this would be a cool plugin in tandem with VHS to use whenever I'm using a lo-fi section, in which this track actually has a lo-fi section to where I could see myself replacing what I have, which I think is just a bit crusher or something in this section right here, I believe. So yeah, so for this in particular, I'm using isotope vinyl and with a saturator to kind of just make it sound, give it that lo-fi sound. So if I were to turn this off, this is what it would sound like. So if I were to maybe add something like tape and VHS, then perhaps we can get something that might be kind of similar for that effect that I'm trying to achieve.
That shit through.
So, there's something with that to kind of mess around with. And I think that I would need to spend more time as opposed to, just trying to see if I can get it to sound good. But that could be one of those specific use cases that I'm talking about. And you don't necessarily even have to use this for lo-fi, but you can for one, or you can use this to get that tape saturated feel on any kind of instruments that you want. So with that, I think that the quality is definitely there. And I think that it's really going to be up to the individual and the user for what they're looking for. And whether or not, the aesthetics of these sounds fit within their kind of, artistry or within their, their flavor or their style. But in any case, I had a blast reviewing this stuff. And if there are any other, developer companies out there or something that want me to review something, if I have the time, I'll do it. But yeah, I think this was really cool and I had a great experience and I love learning about plugins and stuff. And hopefully you guys had fun watching this. So with that out of the way, thanks again to Baby Audio. I really appreciate it. For you guys, if you like these, then go check them out at babyaudio.com, I think. Baby Audio, let me double check. Babyaudio.io. I'll leave a link in the description, or babyodd.io. And with that, thank you all so much. I will see you in the next one.